Dr. Christian Barnard performed the world's first heart transplant operation in South Africa on December 3, 1967, and although the beneficiary died 18 days later, the whole world watched and copied. Within 5 months, Montreal surgeon Pierrre Grondin performed Canada's first heart transplant operation, the world's 18th, on Albert Murphy, 59, a butcher and father of 3 from Chaumet-Laval, at the Montreal Heart Institute on 31 May 1968. Murphy had suffered coronary thrombosis, hardening blood vessels which triggered several heart attacks and forced him to retire 8 years earlier. Teresa Cazoubon, 38, now known as Mrs. Rondeau from her truck driver husband Gerard, was born in Maskinonge and was living in Saint-Michel with her husband and 4 kids. She was 5 months pregnant with her 5th child when she died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Within 1 minute of her death, at 11:29 on a Thursday morning, the transplant operation began. It involved 2 separate operating rooms, a dozen doctors on the recipient, and 9 on the donor, all requiring perfect coordination as the patient was kept alive on a heart-lung machine. The surgeon clamped off Mercy's aorta and then cut the back of the atrium, his upper heart chamber, and then cut the aorta and pulmonary artery and removed ventricular mass, and then did the same with the other heart, and then took about 30 minutes to stitch it into Murphy's chest. Murphy's new heart was much smaller, and Grondin wasn't sure it would work. Alas, Murphy survived 46 hours only. Surgeons at the Royal Victoria Hospital also used the donor's 2 kidneys to give to a pair of women. The surgical team didn't only have to deal with a new medical procedure, but also had to find suitable donors and tackle complex legal questions before embarking on these operations, as they sought to avoid lawsuits. They set up a heart donor registry that summer in hopes of getting more donors. A 49-year-old electrical engineer and father of 5 was the next to get a replacement heart as Gaetan Paris went on the table. He coped with myocardial infarction, which saw his good tissue turn bad, leading to 3 heart attacks, one leaving him in a coma for 2 weeks. The donor was not identified, but was a patient of Dr. Gaston Choquette. Much ado was made for Mr. Paris as he was doing well and posing in public for photo ops until he died in early December 1968 from gastric fluid in his lungs. He lasted 5 months, making him Canada's longest surviving heart transplant patient at the time. The 3rd heart transplant operation in Montreal and in Canada, and 35th on the planet, took place on 30 August 1968 when Sherbrooke textile worker Elie Zayor, 58, received the heart of Aimé Lamotte, 38, who had died of a brain hemorrhage after being in a deep coma. Both were fathers of 5. Zayor died of a stroke 11 days after the 4-hour operation. Number 4 was Edouard Desrivières, 51, whose defective ticker was replaced with a 19-year-old heart on 26 September 1968. Desrivières got the heart from Jacques Boudreau, who died in a motorcycle accident at Cap de la Madeleine. Desrivières died of a kidney infection on 4 December 1968. It was a particular downer for the team, as Gaetan Paris had died 2 days prior as well. Doctors noted that neither death was caused by tissue rejection. Number 5, just 2 days after the Desrivières operation, Grondin was back with his saw, clamps and scalpel and sewing kit to save Rosaire Bryan, 58, a provincial roads department employee from Saint-Esprit-de-Montcalm, who got his new heart on 28 September 1968 in Montreal. Bryan was laughing and joking prior to the operation, which saw a Canadian medical first as the young man's dead body was flown into town from New Brunswick. Gary Mercer, 16, had died from a skull fracture in a motorcycle crash. Desrivières survived 4 months, dying in January 1969. Number 6, John Parkinson, 53, a district sales manager for Uniroyal, was next up as he got a replacement heart on 3 November 1968 after suffering several heart attacks. Parkinson managed to survive a lot longer than the others, lasting 3 years before dying on 10 November 1972 of a stroke. His widow Anne vowed to write a book about the experience. They had no kids. By this time, the heart transplants were no longer considered sufficiently notable to publish photos or bios in newspapers. Other heart recipients from the period included Aldo Martini, 43, who lasted 43 days. Ludger Seneschal, 35, a machinist from Quebec City, lasted 2 months. Gerard Levesque, 53, lasted a pair of months, while others like Harry Zinman, 35, died while waiting for a donor. It took another decade for heart transplants to make major bounds forward as the anti-rejection drug cyclosporine came onto the scene in 1978 and started having an impact on heart transplant in the early 1980s. These days, surgeons perform about 5,000 heart transplants annually, about 200 in Canada alone, and the recipient lasts an average of 10 years after the operation.